Emily, this is a topic that you suggested. Obviously, very seasonal. We've just had Glastonbury. We're now just attending Glastonbury virtually here and there, catching up with bands or people like Ray, who I've never heard of before, but I thought was fantastic. But you've been doing a bit of reading, and we've been trying to join the dots with a topic that you're interested in, and Glastonbury. Tell us more about it, please.
Yeah, well, we were watching Glastonbury on Catch Up, and this is my kind of type.
Oh, just to say, we've got some links
links.
buttons
Hooray,
for people to
links.
click on. Please do. I think it's when I'm on the screen, the buttons can't appear. So what we'll do is we'll get the camera to switch over to you, and then we can share those rare, valuable buttons. Thank you.
So attending Glastonbury in my front room is my kind of festival going, because it's like your own toilet. And
in the front room.
Not in the front room, in your house. And
you've also got the best view.
You've got the best view.
Filmed amazingly, best sound quality.
You don't have to be in 30 plus degree heat in a tent. So lots to recommend it. And I really enjoyed Ray's set. I hadn't really come across her before, and I thought her vocal range, her show was amazing. But I was also really incredibly...
Followed by Neil Young, who's the same range if you measure it over decades.
What was left of Neil Young, who is an icon to me and an incredibly important
Was he the
musical...
Sunday headliner?
Yeah. Also loved Pulp, because Pulp is the sound of our generation, and also... your cousin, our niece Eleanor, is friends with one of his nieces or nephews, and used to come across him a lot, sort of around having tea at their house.
So Uncle
Jarvis.
Uncle Jarvis arrives.
Uncle Jarvis did everyone proud and put on a fabulous show. But I was also really struck by how much Ray meant to the audience, because I think her backstory, I believe, is that she talks a lot about kind of sexual harassment in the music industry, about her own sexual experiences of sexual harassment, and she was dropped by music labels, told to write happier things, I think. And I was really struck by how much her lyrics and her message resonated with the audience, and there were particularly young women there who were just like crying, singing along, completely into the whole thing. And it really made me think about the music's power to get people at an emotional level, that it is so much more satisfying than language in a way. And at the same time, this week has been the week of a school reunion. It's 40 years since I left school. And I didn't make it to the reunion, sadly, but there's now a WhatsApp group of all of us, and we're kind of connecting with each other for the first time for 40 years. And one of my very close friends at the time became a music therapist, and I ended up just sort of looking for her stuff online and found her PhD thesis, and it's on exactly the same thing, which is about how music therapy and all the therapies are funded based on their results, based on, what can you prove about this intervention? How do you put it in language that funders will understand?
Now, we do a lot of research, don't we? And
we do.
Alice, you're preparing research grant applications and things like that. They keep asking, don't they, just to interrupt a second, for proof or impact, what change you're going to make, outcome measures. It's very challenging measures to have, isn't
very
it?
Challenging.
I was you're
really
studying the world, but how are you going to change the world?
Yeah, I was really interested because I'm a speech and language therapist as my background. I'm trained in having to measure outcomes to show that you've made a meaningful impact on somebody. And I think, and I have worked with a music therapist before, and I've watched them in action. And it is really interesting to me that there is it seems like, there's not much money in music therapy because of this whole issue of measuring impact. And actually, I sort of had quite a different view to you, because in my background, I've learned many ways of quantifying and measuring like non-language changes in somebody. So someone who's had like a severe stroke and they can no longer speak, but they can do a lot to communicate. And there's lots of ways of quantifying that. And I think it's sort of like those tools maybe haven't made their way across to the music therapy world, but they are still very meaningful.
So tell us a bit more then about this research that interested you.
That I think that part of it also is like that was embedded in your training, and what she was saying is like she trained in the kind of early 90s, I think, and evidence-based policy was introduced by the Blair government really as a reaction to the very ideologically driven policy of the Thatcher government. So it's not like we do this because we believe it's right in here.
Yeah.
We do this because the evidence shows that it is effective, and that sort of releases you from the tyranny of ideology. But of course, anything also has its own tyranny, and I was really interested because, I mean, you've thought about all of this in your training, but it was quite new to me, how reductive language is, how difficult it is to really put into words the emotion that music really gets to. And there's one bit in this writing that really struck me. She's saying, I could write a classical music score that would encapsulate all of the different strains and the polyphony of the way music affects you, or this case, but language I have to reduce to one single narrative line. And we all come across it when we're trying to put the big emotions into language. We sound like idiots. We're not all Shakespeare can do, and then we're drawn to poetry and drawn to music because it does it for us.
But you're also required throughout life to do these unemotional hard measures. What is the value of your business financially? What is the value of your business
I have something
in turnover?
to say about this, which is there's been this whole sort of tagline of what I'd call the manosphere and the alt-right, which has been facts don't care about your feelings for the last kind of 2 decades. And it's this idea, that it used to be sort of seen as like irrefutable biological evidence about the differences between, say, men and women's bodies that makes them designed for different roles and behaviours. And actually now it feels like there's this kind of re-evaluation. I saw a video recently called Facts Do Care About Your Feelings, actually, and always have. And that actually, as a researcher, I feel like everything is you research something because you care about it. You don't just do it because of the numbers. And actually, I think humans are way more driven by feelings-based arguments than, well, the evidence says this. It just doesn't cut through.
It absolutely doesn't. So my request to you, data analyst and speech therapist, is let's go back to Glastonbury and let's think about the crowd and their reaction to the different acts. How do we measure that in a way that would get funding? Lucian.
Well, I actually approach that as a data analyst, and so I'm looking at crowd analysis. And when you look at crowd analysis, you're looking at crowd control, behaviour monitoring that's already there. So I would actually be looking for things like real-time insights into crowd activity, density, movement patterns, and unusual activity. And when you specifically think about that in terms of AI and tools for measuring audience appreciation and emotion and interaction, there are tools there. So you've got facial recognition and emotional recognition in algorithms already that can analyze facial expressions from video feeds, providing there are ethical things about proper consent and privacy considerations. But if you say you're already getting comedians who are being able to find out, reviewing crowds, exactly when a joke landed, or for a musician, moments of intense engagement, or even a sense of awe. you're now getting AI patterns and algorithms that can do this. So if I was looking at the emotional response, the collective, I would go to crowds. I would certainly go to, because crowds are big data by default, and I would start to look at those technologies which look at pattern management, energy, and they can look at people who are dancing to a high energy band and those sorts of things.
I
And
think
then
so.
it
If
moves,
I wanted to get funding to measure the impact of a Glastonbury performance, I would take it away from emotions. I wouldn't talk about emotions in my funding application because that gets everybody very anxious. I'd look at, like you said, quantifiable stuff that's already there, quite boring. How many people are in the crowd? Volume of audience appreciation, movement patterns. I'd make it quite
I was
boring.
going to say there is also I agree with you. There is also a bridge into neuro-linguistic programming and coupling that audience energy analysis with social media and mentions and things like that as well, which come together.